good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, you thirsty bunch of beer drinkers, whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. Thanks for pressing play and supporting a Canadian podcast. I'm Troy Birch with Great Lakes, Ontario's local brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery based in Etobicoke who brings you this here Between Two Fermenters, the podcast where craft beer and conversation collide, straight from the tanks to your ears. Before consolidation, before global beer conglomerates, before craft versus industrial lager was even a conversation, before hazy IPAs, tall boy cans, and 340 Ontario breweries, there was 1867. The year Canada became a nation, and the year a woman named Susannah Oland started brewing beer on her family farm in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Not as a grand business plan, not with investors, and certainly not with a brand deck. She did it to support her family. She couldn't even put her name on the business at first. It was S. Oland and Sons because she simply couldn't put the name Susannah on a brewing operation in 1867. So think about that for a second. That was the beginning of what we know now as Moosehead Breweries. You've likely heard the story a time or two. A company that has survived 2 world wars, the Halifax Explosion of 1917, in which a family member lost his life, Prohibition, the Great Depression, devastating fires, a move across provinces, competition from foreign-owned breweries, mergers and acquisitions, obstructive trade barriers, a global pandemic, and more offer sheets to sell than most people in this industry will ever know about. One family, 6 generations, one answer to those offers every single time. No, thank you. We're not for sale. Now, I want to spend a moment on today's guest before I bring him on because for me, this one's a bit personal. Andrew Oland, one of the most recognized names in Canadian brewing. He and I first crossed paths in the early 2010s, back when Ontario craft beer world was still finding its legs and everyone kind of knew everyone. Even then, with everything that Moosehead was carrying as a brand, the history, the scale, the weight of that name, Andrew was never that guy. He was always approachable, curious to chat about other breweries, both big and small, open with his experiences in a way that a lot of other people at his level, simply aren't. Always willing to share, always happy to talk. That made an impression on me early, and it has stuck with me ever since. We sat down for an interview and ended up putting back a whack of beers in the process. A president and CEO of a national brewery who walks the walk and talks the talk. Then in 2023, I had the opportunity to go out and visit the brewery in St. John, New Brunswick. And I'll be honest with you, you can read all about Moosehead. You can study the history. There is a great book about the company and the family called Last Canadian Beer by Harvey Swaller that I recommend. But you don't really feel it until you're standing inside those walls. We sat down to talk about what it means to take a company like GLB into a 3rd generation of modern leadership. The responsibility that comes with that, the decisions that keep you up at night, what you protect and what you're willing to change. It was one of the more memorable conversations I've had in this industry, and I knew walking out of there that it needed to be in an episode. So here we are. I have the privilege of welcoming the 6th generation of the Oland family to the show. Andrew Oland, the great-great-great-grandson of founder Susannah, the president and CEO of Moosehead Breweries, the last major brewery in Canada still owned by Canadians. He's not a startup founder. He's a steward, a custodian of 159 years of history, and in my view, one of the most important people in the Canadian beer business today. But this episode isn't just a story about beer or one brewery. It's about independence. It's about legacy. It's about what it costs to protect something worth protecting, the last of the big independent national beer companies. It's about paying respect to those who came before us, who we can both learn from and admire from afar. Now, Moosehead has been making headlines lately, and it's not just for the beer. From bold marketing moves like the presidential pact to the decision to ditch the bottle entirely in favor of cans to those new maple leaf tab lids on their cans, a quietly patriotic little touch that I love. Moosehead has been doing a lot of interesting things under Andrew's watch. Today, we're going to get into all of it. The Oland family story from 1867 to today, what independence really means when you're staring down a global conglomerate, the pressures of leading a 150-plus-year-old company in today's beer landscape, and what it means to make decisions, not for the next quarter, but for the next generation. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time, so sit back, grab a fresh GLB. My conversation with Andrew Oland is coming right up. Hang tight.
It's Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery. We believe in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. It's Great Lakes Brewery. Order online for free local home delivery. In the GTA, good times and amazing beer. That's GLB.
Mr. Andrew Oland, welcome to Between Two Fermenters.
Thank you very much, Troy. It's a real pleasure to be here.
And it's, yes, for those wondering, Andrew is here in the studio today. He's not sitting in his office at the brewery in St. John, New Brunswick. He is here in glorious Etobicoke. I said at the brewery earlier today, there was no way I was going to have you on the show without you being here in person. So this is it means a lot to me. So big thank you for being in person here today. But you're thirsty. I saw you grabbing for that Canuck earlier. So from one Canadian brewery to another and one Canuck to another, crack that sucker open.
Thank
Here we
you.
go.
Cheers.
Cheers. So you were just at the brewery before we came over to record this, and you had a chance to tour the brewery and sample Little Pills, one of the new beers that we just launched. Unfortunately, by the time this is being released, this episode, it will be all sold out, but we promise we'll do it again. What do you think? It's been a couple years since, or more than a couple years since you saw the brewery last.
I just have one word. Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's just great to see your growth, and both, I'll call it inside in terms of the new brew house that's going in, the tanks, and then the whole tap room retail side. Well done.
Oh, thank you. So when planning out this interview, I really wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go in. There's so many options we could go down. We could have talked about just you. We could have talked about just the history of Moosehead. We could have talked about just the beers. But I'm interested in kind of blending that all together and hearing about you on leadership, thoughts on the industry, and much more stuff outside of Moosehead. So does that sound good? Ready to get in?
Yep.
All right. So all that laid out, Andrew, before we get into the Moosehead story, let's talk about you for a second. Introduce yourself. Who is Andrew Oland outside of the title and the brewery?
So I live in St. John, New Brunswick with my wife, Leslie. We've been married now 36 years. We have 3 children. Our eldest son, Christopher's 38. So he was 2 years premature. So if you get that joke.
For Great Lakes, yeah, I get it. Okay, yeah.
No, Christopher came a little bit before the wedding band.
Okay.
And
I see. Okay, I was referencing like Great Lakes history here.
So Leslie and I, we ended up having 3 children by the time we were 25. And so that teaches you to grow up. And so right now, 3 adult children, all living. 2 are in Canada and 1 in London, England. Unfortunately, none in New Brunswick, and 2 grandsons, and 1 in Yellowknife and 1 in London. So long way away, but thank goodness there's FaceTime. So,
sure.
And I work hard, but I also like to do other things. I mean, we can get into it later, but
you like to cycle?
I like to cycle. I like to ski, both downhill and cross country. I like to read. You know how some people had like sourdough bread or all these things during COVID? My thing was my grass, my lawn. Yeah. I went from like the outhouse to the penthouse in terms of the quality of my lawn through COVID.
So next time I come out to New Brunswick, I want to come by and drink a beer on this lush lawn.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The Oland name is woven deep into the Canadian brewing history. You've got Moosehead, but the family's connection to beer goes back even further than that. So can you set the stage for people who might not know the full backstory?
Yeah. So Susannah and John Oland were living in England in the 1860s. 9 children, and they had struggled financially for many years. And they decided to take a chance on a new country. And John came first. He came in 1862, 1863. And then a couple of years later, Susannah, with the 9 children, moved to Halifax, Nova Scotia, in search of the Canadian dream. And Susannah was a brewer in England, as many women would have been, particularly in a rural area. And my sense is that sort of Susannah was more of the industrious one of the pair, and John might have been more of the let's just say he liked the samples.
He might have been the consumer.
Yeah, he was more of the consumer. So they and Halifax, as it is today, but back then would have been a naval seaport town. And they opened this brewery. They got they were able to cobble together some money, and they opened this brewery, and things were going pretty well. And then in 1870, John died. He actually fell off his horse, whether it was after too many or not, but not uncommon for that. And of course, this is 1870. The business wasn't really sort of structured, legal documents, all that type of stuff. Susannah ended up losing the business. And then she was able to get it back a few years later, buy it back, and she ran it till 1885. And she's one of Canada's first female entrepreneurs. And by the time she died in 1885, she'd created a nice business, and she was a relatively wealthy person for that time. And she did something that was quite unusual. If you think about succession, she left the business, or the control of the business, to her youngest son. And there's two Georges, so George W.C., and he would end up running the business for the next 38 years. So, as long as Great Lakes has been in business, right? And had to deal with a whole lot. So that's the opening line of the story.
That is the opening line, but there is so much more packed into that, because there was a move during that time. The Halifax Explosion of 1917 actually killed one of the Olands, the brewmaster at the time, if I'm not mistaken, and then moved the family uprooted and moved to St. John, New Brunswick. And did they buy a brewery at that time, the Red Ball or James Ready? Or
so what happened was, so Halifax was
decimated.
2,000 people killed, 2,000 people blinded, all these buildings destroyed. Obviously, we're still in the middle of World War I. And so George W.C. says, okay, we got to rebuild this, but I've also got some sons, and they've got things to do. So I sent my great-grandfather, George B. Oland, to St. John, bought the Red Ball Brewery in what we call Uptown, or downtown St. John, and operated that until 1928, when he bought the James Ready Brewery, which is on our site now, Main Street West in St. John. And so you had this situation where you had George W.C., some of his family operating a brewery in Halifax under Oland, and some in St. John under Oland. And of course, back then, Troy, like the idea that a brewery in Halifax and a brewery in St. John, which is probably 3.5 hours away by car, would ever
today, but back then,
back then,
a couple of days on a horse and buggy.
It would ever compete. Like, it just was just not realistic, right? It would be like going to the moon tomorrow. But then over time, they became competitors. And well,
not to cut you off, they bought Alexander Keith's in 1920 or so.
Yeah, they bought Alexander Keith's, and they were successful, and they had a good business a very good business in Nova Scotia, and we had a good business in New Brunswick.
Yeah. So that was the two brothers that started the Oland legacy, if you will, pre or post Susannah. And the brewery Red Ball, James Ready, it then morphed into New Brunswick Breweries that became Moosehead. So that was, the company wasn't always known as Moosehead. I want to make that distinction. That happened around the 1950s, correct?
1940s.
1940s, okay.
So I mean, just in the 20s, we just made beer. Right? Everyone just made beer. There was no, and then as you get to the late 20s, you start to see the emergence of the first brands, and that's where Moosehead Pale Ale came from. And of course, at that time, brewers were almost all ales. There were no lagers at the time.
And we're going to talk about beers shortly, but I think Alpine was your first lager. Yeah. And that was a dream. I think your grandfather had a dream about like the Alps or something. And
it's so my grandfather went to UNB. He did a chemistry degree, and he was training to be a brewer. And so he did a stint in Europe, including some time in Copenhagen with Carlsberg, almost like an internship or something like that. And he was exposed to lagers for the first time, lager yeast and the refreshment associated with lagers. And he came back to St. John, and he started brewing lagers, playing around. And at this time, if you had a certain amount of wealth and you required sort of medical attention, surgery, you would typically, if you're in the Maritimes, go to Boston, and it would be more like an extended spa experience than what healthcare is today. You'd literally go for like 2 or 3 weeks for pre-op. You'd have the operation and you'd be recovered. So he was away for like 8 weeks. And I think there's a story in here for all family businesses. So they're on the phone. My grandfather is Philip. My great-grandfather is George. And Philip says, "Yeah, I've been working on this lager, and I'm really looking forward to you trying it when you come back to St. John." And my grandfather says, "That sounds really exciting. You know, if it meets my standards, we might even consider selling it on the market." And with that, my grandfather Philip pauses and says, "Well, it's actually been on the market for about 10 days and doing rather well." And that is, to this day, it's still our number one brand in the province of New Brunswick.
The Alpine. The Alpine. And I have a very fond, I love that beer. When we went out to visit, it was everywhere. And I think that's all we drank. Was Alpine. But we're going to come to we'll get to the beer.
And just a story on the label. Of course, 1937, Germany, Nazism, all into stuff. So my grandfather wanted some type of association with German beer culture, but was very conscious of of obviously what was going on. And that Christmas, my grandmother, Mary, had received a postcard, a Christmas card with the Matterhorn
on it,
and that's where the name Alpine.
He saw the drawing or whatever and said, "Oh, that's it."
And that's where it came from. Yeah.
So fires, relocations, prohibition, explosions. If you were to say, how did those moments shape the company's DNA? Like, what would you say? How all of that through 6 generations of Olands, how did it shape what Moosehead is today?
So I'll just tell you another story about my grandfather, because on Saturday, obviously, it was the anniversary for D-Day. And my grandfather was D-Day +4. And not only that, he spent 2 years using every piece of influence and power he had to get from St. John, New Brunswick to England, because he wanted to participate and be an active participant in the war. And I think it just speaks to, it's no different than the Great Lakes story. Every generation, every decade, you've had to overcome adversity. It's like a muscle you develop, and you get into these situations, and you don't know how you're going to do it. You just know you're going to do it.
You're going to get through.
You're just going to get through, and I think that's probably the most powerful lesson from a multi-generational family business. I mean, sure, every business has had challenges, but can you imagine, waking up in the morning and your brewery's destroyed and 2,000 people are dead. Like, it's unfathomable, right?
There was fires even before the Halifax explosion, right? And then, like I said, the wars, the global pandemic, the mergers, acquisitions. You guys had to open a place again in Dartmouth years later to sell into that province. 159 years, you've been through a lot. You've been through truck heists, and you've been through getting beers in Mexico and the US as one of your biggest markets. And then that shrunk. And so ebb and flow contracts. But I actually, now that I think about it, I want to go back. So the Carlsberg connection, is that where the yeast bank came from years ago? Do you guys use the Carlsberg yeast in your lagers from back then?
We don't use the Carlsberg yeast, but we obviously use it.
It's a strain of
lager yeast.
That just popped in my head, and that's a lot of the older breweries started with using that yeast, right? Yeah. So it is a remarkable family legacy. When you were growing up in that Oland household, what did beer mean to you as a young child or teenager?
It probably got a little different when I got to be a teenager.
But, it was all around all the time.
But growing up, my parents were fabulous, and there was no expectation that we were going to work in the family business. In fact, it was almost the opposite. And my parents worked very hard to make sure we were grounded. But I would say this, one of my sort of unique memories as a child is I could always tell when my grandfather had been in Halifax, Dartmouth, and he'd probably come over, I don't know, every 2 or 3 months, because I'd be able to smell the cigar smell in my father's car when my dad took me to school the next morning. And that was just a quaint connection with it. And then, once I got to be sort of 14, 15, 16, just more aware of what was going on. Just a lot of pride. But my parents made it very clear, sort of after school, after university or post-secondary education, there was only one place you weren't going to work, and that was Moosehead.
Well, you were named the president in 2008. I'm going to ask you what that moment was like in a second, but I know from our relationship, you've said that your family, the expectation was you work outside the business first. Why do you think they wanted you to go that route? Or you and your brother, who's also the CFO right now?
Yeah. So I think it's, and I've talked to sort of multiple family businesses, you just want people to go somewhere else, to learn, to make mistakes, to just be treated not as a special person. Yeah. And I think ultimately it creates confidence. And it's tough when you fail, but as a young person, failing a few times is probably good for humility. I'm
sure, though, during high school years and even university, you went and did some work at the brewery.
Yep, and I worked at the brewery, and I worked at our cold beer store in Dartmouth. In Dartmouth? Yeah, and it was a lot of fun.
And what did you do when you went after university?
So I worked at a shipyard in Halifax. I did a sort of a management trainee program for a couple of years, which was really great because I sort of spent a bit of time in each department. And then we were building a tugboat, which to this day is still floating in Halifax Harbor and working, hasn't sunk.
What, and the Theodore the tugboat?
It's called the Point Shabukto. Okay. And I was the project planner for that. And then it was at that point I was like, okay, I was also thinking about my family and the age of my children, and like, okay, if we're going to set roots somewhere, so I had some conversations with my father, and then I ended up starting at the time, we called it a foreman in our bottle shop. I don't know if you remember the old TV show Laverne and Shirley. Yeah. My joke I would have been like their boss if I was, but at the time we didn't have cans at our St. John brewery. Those were only in the Dartmouth brewery, but we had 2 bottle lines plus a keg line. And and it was just it was a fabulous experience. And I spent a couple of years doing that, and about 6 months on the brewing side, mostly in filtration. And then I went back to business school. I wanted to transition to the commercial side of the business, and that would have been 1995.
And that is that where you met Jim Cook from Boston Beer, Sam Adams?
Yeah, I was down in Boston, and I
at a little school called Harvard. Yeah.
If you don't apply, you don't get in. I applied, but it was a fabulous experience. And so I just one day I came home from school, and Sam Adams was quite big in Boston at the time. It hadn't really gone much beyond Boston,
and it was still at that time a contract.
Yeah, very much, and which was so unique for the industry. So this would have been like 1996. So one day I remember I got home from class and I just said, I'm going to call this guy up, and I called him up, and he took the call, and we chatted for 20 minutes or so. And I remember saying, and I was just quite, I said, well, look, if you're ever looking at something in Canada, please, and they had an arrangement at the time, but probably about 12 years later, we'd end up
2010 or so.
Yeah, 2010, and we've been very proud to be importer of the Boston Beer Company ever since in Canada.
I was there for the launch party of Moosehead taking that on, or the premium beer company. And so how many beers, when you were talking with Jim, how many beers did you guys have?
Well, the first time it was on the phone.
Okay, so he was.
But I got to tell you this Jim Cook story though. So, we're doing a Sam Adams, Boston Lager event here in Toronto. We brought Jim in. He's done some media stuff, and then we take him to this sort of party. There's like 350 people. He walks in. It's like Taylor Swift walks in, right? It's Jim Cook's here, and like some people are like being cool, and and other people are like coming right up to him, and he's awesome. So I said, Jim, can I get you a beer? And he says, I hand him this beer. He takes a sip, and he says, this isn't a Boston Lager. It's one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. I almost died. What had happened is we were serving Boston Lager and Rebel IPA at the event, and someone had switched the tap handles.
Oh, no.
And we got him a Boston Lager, and
he was all good.
And I've learned so much from Jim about the beer business, but just about business as well. He's just a fabulous individual.
I didn't have the Jim Cook on the playlist here, but it's always great because he's an amazing human being, and he does like to drink his own beer, and so he's got a lot of stories just like you do. But so you were named president in 2008. So you obviously moved up. You did a whole bunch of roles within the brew. What was that moment like when your dad tapped you on the shoulder and said, "We're going to make this happen"?
So I'm sitting in my office. It's like December 15th or something, normal day. I was in charge of our business in Quebec at the time, and my father's executive assistant, a woman named Janet Hunt, calls me and says, your father wants to see you.
A little shout out to Janet, who's now retired, right?
Who's now, exactly. You've met Janet. Yeah. Your father wants to see you. And this is highly unusual. My father's, he's a very casual, relaxed man, but we just at work we had like a business relationship. If I wanted to see him, call, make an appointment, and I didn't report to him, so why would I? It wasn't. So anyhow, I go down, and it's father and a gentleman named Bruce McCubbin. So what had happened is, in 1997, father decided he didn't want the day-to-day, and he hired Bruce to be president of Moosehead. Bruce did it for about 8 years. And then a gentleman named Steve Poirier, who was our vice president of marketing, became president. So everything's going, Steve's only been in the job a couple of years. Mm-hmm. So I get in the office, in my father's office, and father says, Steve's just handed in his resignation, and we'd like you to become the next president of Moosehead. And all I could think was, you got to get out of this office as quickly as you can so they don't change their mind. So don't say anything stupid. So I was like, okay, thank you very much. That's great. And when are we going to announce this? And Steve was staying for a while, so I think it was like February 15th or something. So I said, okay, thanks. It was like a 4-minute meeting. And then I left. And I was in my office, and I was like, do I call my wife? And so I decided, no, I'm going to have a bit of fun with this. So at the end of the day, I went home, and the classic, you walk in the door, how was your day? And I said, I got something to tell you, honey. And
so it was totally unexpected.
It was the timing was totally.
You knew it was going to come one day, but
I was, yeah. I mean, there was nothing, there's no guarantees, but I knew I was on a path.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, the timing was completely unexpected.
So now you're in the company, not you're president, but what was the one thing that you fully didn't understand about the business until you were actually really in it?
Probably my biggest learning is any leader of an organization is, as much as your job is to say yes to stuff, it's probably more important to say no.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it feels better too.
Yeah. If I had a do-over, we would have just been far more disciplined about what we said yes to.
Yeah.
And we would have said no to a lot of stuff, because you want to make an impact, you want things to happen, but at the end of the day, the team can only do so much well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you run a family business. It's a large family business, but it's a family business nonetheless. Your name's literally on the family tree. It's right in the DNA of Moosehead. How do you define your role within the Oland story, and what's the hardest part of running that business with your name right there?
Look, I love what I do, and I'm so fortunate. And like everyone else, I have good days and bad days, but I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the Oland family legacy or sort of have this weight on my shoulders. I'm very fortunate to be able to run a company that was in good shape when I became president, and I'm working hard to make it so it's in great shape when someone takes it over from me. And
you paused when you're talking about takes it over from me.
Yeah.
Are you working on that already?
Yeah, we're starting to. So I'm 58. My brother Patrick is our CFO, and we've just sort of in the last couple of years sort of done the financial transaction between Generation 5, my father Derek, and Patrick and myself. So I guess you could say Patrick and I are co-owners. Although we owe my father a lot of money, but that's another story. But we're co-owners, and so I have 3 adult children.
Whatever you pay him is going to come back in the will.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the nature of family businesses. Yeah. I have 3 adult children, and I would say that 2 of those are attending our board meetings now, and there isn't a path today for them to come into Moosehead, but there may be a path tomorrow for them. So it's one of the things for me is I'm 58. I'm not going to be doing this in this role when I'm 68. It's running any type of business is it takes a lot of energy. It's a lot of work, and I like it. But I'm starting to slow down, Troy.
Well, there is, and we were going to talk about it later, but we might as well stick to this succession planning right now. You and your family are really known for it in Canada. You've helped GLB and countless other companies over the years. So what are the principles that are guiding this new process, and how will that shape the future of Moosehead? So it sounds like, in my opinion, you have 10-year kind of runway to.
Yeah, I mean that the main principle is that if the next generation wants the business, we would like the next generation to be in a position to acquire the business, and we want them to be successful. And the principle about them being successful is we want them to be able to focus on running the business and not managing the family.
Yeah.
And, there is a difference between owners and shareholders. And so as much as possible, we want to have owners. And, my grandfather was able to work very hard over a number of years to buy out his siblings. Same with my father. And now, Patrick and I have a structure where it will to go to, the next generation. And we want to set that generation up for success.
Nice. So let's go back to Moosehead in the year 1867. So Canada became a country, and it's a remarkable piece of symmetry. No marketing dollars can pay for that. What does that legacy mean to you personally? Moosehead 1867, Canada 1867.
I'm incredibly proud to be a Canadian.
As you drink your Canuck Pale Ale?
Yes, as I drink my Canuck Pale Ale. And I think that's one of the great things about Canada is that at one level, we're competitors, obviously. And, we've got salespeople out competing for shelf space, tap handles, and all that type of stuff. But at another level, we want this industry to do well, and we want this country to do well. And so I think that Moosehead is a great example of Canada, and I mean this in a positive way. Canada's tough, right? We're a northern climate, big distances, but Canadians are special, and we're very proud to have a small role in that.
We will never go after a Moosehead tap, just an FYI. You've mentioned in the past that Moosehead has fielded countless offers to sell. Your father made it clear that you're not for sale when he was running it, and now is he still the chairman of the board? Yep. And you've made it clear that you aren't for sale. You're Canada's largest independently owned brewery, and it's a big title. It's a big honor to carry. And again, in my opinion, there's consolidation everywhere. ABM Bev, that's what they do now. Molson Coors has been doing it. So how have you managed to stay independent, and have you really been put in a position where you've been really tested? Like, let's think on this.
Yeah. I think that on the first part of your question, I think we're fortunate that we do have a certain amount of scale so that we can be somewhat competitive. We're never going to have the cost structure of ABI or Molson Coors, but our facility in St. John's pretty good. Ideally, it would be located in the middle of the country, but you know what
But what does that mean? Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'll come back to that, but
so and we work hard to on all that type of stuff, and to run I'll call it a good business, a good business. And I think, and this goes back to what I talked about earlier, the more that you can focus and be consistent, I think it's works for your employees, but also works for your consumers and your customers. And I think ultimately that's a big part of our success.
And has there ever been a point, though, where you were really considering one of those offer sheets?
No. I mean, look, I've I'm sure in previous generations they've had down days. I've had down days, but just pure sort of finance. The last thing you want to do is sell when you're down, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, if you decide for whatever reason, okay, we're going to sell, then in any business it should probably be a 2 or 3 year process to maximize the opportunity. But no, we're focused on just getting a little bit better every day and growing. And we see the beer Canada category in Canada is tough. It's strained. At the same time, through our relationship with Boston Beer, we're big into RTDs now, and we still see lots of opportunities for beer in Canada for ourselves and maybe in other parts of the world as well.
For sure. So your father had a famous line, "I don't want to be the biggest, I just want to be around the longest." So when it comes to those offer sheets and you're being the president and CEO, do you carry that in the business decisions you make to this day?
Certainly, I've made decisions where there's pain today and, the value is not going to be until 20, 25 years from now, right? And I think that's just, you talked about it in the intro. Yes, we're trying to hit our quarterly numbers. Yes, we're trying to hit our annual plan numbers, all that type of stuff. But we want to set ourselves up like, what looks good 10 years from now, what looks good 20 years from now, and really make those decisions and really in investments, whether it's, financial investments, people investments, brand investments, that set us up for true long-term success.
And you mentioned, you operate of St. John's and you're not, or St. John, sorry. That's a big error to say St. John's, St. John, New Brunswick. You're not in Toronto, you're not in Montreal, you're not in one of the big centers in Canada. But what does that mean, though, being rooted in the Maritimes for Moosehead?
Yeah. So I think it's like everything else, Troy. There's a plus and a minus. On the plus side, I have a 17-minute drive to work, 19 if I miss the commute, if I miss the light, just like it's a different way. And I love where I live in New Brunswick, but yet not just me, but my team, we get to experience the rest of Canada, particularly big city Canada, Toronto, Montreal, and all that type of stuff. What it means though is you have to make an effort to stay abreast of what's going on, not just in Toronto, not just in Montreal, what's going on in Calgary, what's going on in Vancouver, what's going on in Winnipeg.
Well, with all the changes in Ontario right now with the FSM, and I'm assuming it's your largest province that you deal or you sell beer into. Yeah,
it certainly is. And, this is probably one of the benefits of a family business. So, in hindsight, I suspect we were a little asleep at the wheel, because if you remember, May 2024, it was supposed to happen in 26, right? The privatization.
Oh, the groceries. The convenience store sales. Yeah,
convenience. And then all of a sudden, Doug Ford says it's going to happen August, whatever, and we had literally come out of sort of a planning meeting that day.
Saying we got 2 years to go, or a year and a half to go. Yeah.
And then it's like, shit. Like, we just blew that up. And we knew we had to make an investment in people. Like but we didn't know, sort of what that was going to be. So I can remember, and we also knew we needed to be ready for, I think it was August 15th or something like that. So I remember talking to the team. I said, okay, look, just let's do some work on this for a couple of weeks, and then we're just going to make a decision, and we'll live with it. And we ended up, and this is, I think, this is the benefit of a private company. We said, okay, this is a big deal. Ontario's our biggest market, as you said. It's important, and we don't want to be behind the eight ball. So we made the decision outside our annual plan with, frankly, not a ton of analysis or to go hire 18 people.
It was gut.
Yeah.
You knew you had to do it.
It was like, you know what? Maybe it's 14, maybe it's 22, but it's not 4.
Yeah. And it felt right. It felt necessary. And yeah, it's, you brought up some painful memories there of one day. Yeah. There was a bunch of OCB people, Ontario Craft Brew members that went to a meeting at Queen's Park, and they came back and like, it's going to be a lot sooner than you think. We don't know when, but the way he was talking, and then the week after we hear, oh, you got 2 months to plan for this. And we're like, holy shit.
Yeah. And I can remember, I was so proud of the team, because we literally said on, I don't know, June 20th, okay, we're going to get these people. And we had them all hired for like August 10th. We did like the 3-day onboarding, and it was like, go sell beer. Yeah. And most of them, because it was so new, they'd never sold beer before, right? But they've done a fabulous job.
But I don't want to assume, but I would say Moosehead probably has a good onboarding in the fact that everyone knows the story, and it's like there's a prideful relationship with the brand. So someone gets a job with Moosehead, and like, I'm representing now the oldest independently owned Canadian brewery. It's a matter of pride walking into a store saying, I represent Moosehead.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And we've worked hard on our onboarding program. We bring everyone to St. John, ideally within the first 3 or 4 months. Sometimes it's first 6 months. And obviously most of the people who come from outside of St. John are salespeople, and one of the things we do, which is really fun, is everyone comes over to my house for dinner.
Oh, nice.
So I give my standard, presentation. I take them through the history and all that type of stuff, and then they come over for dinner, and I've had more people say, "Oh my God, when this started, I didn't know. What do you mean? I got to go to Andrew's house for dinner." So one of the things I have 2 beers on tap in my house. So Moosehead Lager is always the left tap.
Okay.
And then most of the times I'll have East Coast IPA or IPA on the right tap. And so when they come in, I give them the glass and I say, okay, do you know how to pour a draft beer?
Oh, nice. You're testing them at the same time.
And you could have Sally from accounting, right? Who's never poured a beer in her life.
Ever, yeah.
And then you have the people who've been in the industry and they're rock stars, but it really breaks the ice, and it's just I think it's a special part of what we do.
Nice. So how many employees are you just mentioned employees in the onboarding?
We got about 300 now.
300,
and it's across country from St. John's, Newfoundland. We've got employees now. We've got a sales rep in Prince George, BC. We've got a sales rep in Nanaimo, BC. I'm very proud of how we've grown.
Nice. And you're in some other countries and still in the U.S. too?
Yeah, we have a business in the U.S. The U.S. is tough because
it used to be one of your biggest markets.
It used to be a big market for us, and what happened in the U.S. is that our 2 principal competitors, Labatt and Molson, and anyone who lives in Southern Ontario just have to go to Buffalo and see the prices that Labatt Blue is. And unfortunately, just over the last 30 years, the Canadian beer category in the U.S. has gone from sort of
discount brands.
It's basically a discount brand, right? And there's just not enough money in the world for us to. And
everyone knows that. Well, not everyone knows, but those in the industry know. Years ago, when Molson was making the big deal of those tanks coming from the harbor and coming down the highway and hydro lines being taken down, that was to produce Labatt Blue for the American market, which is crazy to think about.
I know. And now with tariffs,
Yeah.
both Labatt Blue and Molson Canadian are made in the U.S. now, and Labatt Blue is owned by a Costa Rican company.
Yeah.
Like it's just so it's a nice market, but it's a challenging market. And then the rest of the world we're more opportunistic. Whether it's the UK, we've got some business in Mexico, we've got some business in Asia.
Mexico, the Moosehead Bandit, was that?
That was hilarious. That was just.
Before we take a quick break, why don't you tell that story about the Moosehead Bandit?
So, the way beer is sold in Mexico, there's the two big breweries. There's Modelo, which would be the Corona Modelo Especial brands, which is ABI now, and then there's FEMSA, which is the Tecate brand, and which is Heineken. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a lovely business from Modelo or FEMSA's perspective, because you only have one competitor and your competitor's smart enough to sort of not screw up the market. And so the retailers were looking for any way to sort of get some power. And so they came up to us. And so we ended up, for a while, we were selling a fair amount of beer in Mexico. It was all cans, and it worked really well. We would just truck to Laredo, Texas, and then they would get across the border and do everything. The business dried up when the peso depreciated and the Canadian dollar went. But for a while, it was nice for us and it was nice for them. So we got a load going to the U.S. and going to Mexico. Truck driver picks it up on a Friday afternoon, and he gets refused at the U.S. border because he's got some type of criminal infraction. So instead of just turning around and, whatever, he does a bit of a runner and he starts trying to sell the beer. The only problem is the beer's destined for Mexico, so it has Spanish labeling on it. So it was pretty easy when the beer started to show up to figure out we had a problem. So anyhow, and we, you've got to be opportunistic to take advantage of these things, and we took advantage of it at the time. And I think at one point it was on the CNN ticker and stuff like that, which is a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the bottle to can decision, some marketing stuff, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the industry today. So hang tight. We'll be right back with Andrew Oland.
Well, how's your doodle? Rollin' Baggage here, rollin' solo down here at Sunnyside Beach. I's likes to get here nice and early to grabs me some prime sandy real estate. I lays out me towel, slather myself liberally with tannin butter, and soak in some tasty vitamin D. Speaking of tasty, looky in me cooler box. A whole gaggle of Sunnyside Session IPA. Big on the taste, low on the alcohol. A springtime, summertime, anytime treat, and a permanent staple in the grips of me fingers. Oh, and check out the can to see a brand new me. Been lifting some iron to boost me biceps, triceps, and me deltoids. You know what they say, sun's out, guns out. Work your tan and crack a can of Sunnyside Session IPA.
Okay, we're back. And so far, Andrew, this has been amazing. We could go for 4 hours today, but we're not going to. I want to get into some of the big news that's happening at Moosehead right now, and the biggest one, I think, because the industry and folks across Canada had some pretty big feelings about this one. I did. My next door neighbor did, who's going to listen to this episode. He went out and bought a case. But a Moosehead announced last year it's shutting down the bottling line and going all in on cans, which has now happened. So walk me through that decision.
Can I open my beer first?
You can open that can of beer. Yes.
All right. So this was first raised in 2019. Mm-hmm. And I remember when it came up, I was like, "Are
No
you
way.
crazy? Are you?" And we started talking about it in 2023 again, and I remember we had like a half-day meeting planned, and this guy Ian Garrett's, he owns all of our analysis and numbers and stuff. He came in with like 5 slides. It took like 8.5 minutes, and it was like there's no future in bottles.
The writing is on the wall.
The writing is it's not that it's small. It's small and declining at big percentages.
57% or whatever. Yeah.
And then our biggest customer was the beer store for bottles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's happened to the beer store, right? And what's the future?
Can you tell me what happened to the beer store?
and what's the future of the beer store?
Yeah.
And we had some. I mean, when we first started talking, people were like, "Oh my god, oh this is crazy," and then we said, "Your province doesn't even sell bottles," and they were like, "Oh,
yeah."
And so I think it's just an example of looking at the future and what's and it wasn't easy. I'm very proud of the team. We had a concentrated effort in terms of, because we had to tell our employees, you think our consumers are our employees. It was fascinating when we talked to our customers. They were like, greatest decision ever, because from their perspective it's a shelf space issue, right? And they're okay, we can put another one of your SKUs on, or we can put someone else's on, or stuff like that. So it's we're just getting to the end of the bottles. You see them a little bit around, but they're basically out of the market now.
Well, like I said, my neighbor went out as soon as he heard the news. He's like, I'm going to buy one case. I'm going to buy a case because I want the nostalgia of that Moosehead green bottle, the beer I drank in university.
And I just got to tell the story. So we did a contest, and we asked Canadians to supply their sort of Moosehead lager bottle story. And the answers were amazing, but the couple who won, it's a guy and a woman, a man and woman from St. John. The guy wrote his phone number on the back of a Moosehead lager label that he peeled off the bottle and gave it to this girl in a bar. 25 years later, they're still married, and she still has the label with the phone number.
Oh, amazing.
And it was just, to me, it's what the beer industry is all about.
That's an emotional connection to the brand as well, too.
Yeah.
You have a customer for life. But the reaction, like you said, people were up in arms about it, but the reaction was very passionate. There's a guy on your Instagram account who claims that he'll comment on everything posted asking for bottles to return until you bring them back. I've heard there's a petition out there asking for Moosehead bottles to be brought back. Did the volume of the move surprise you? Like the volume of the chatter surprise you once you guys announced? Because you got a lot of press for this.
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is the beer industry just gets press.
Yeah.
Like the media.
If you ask for it.
If the media likes beer, and people
and you're
like
a national brand as well, too.
And people like to talk about it and stuff like that. I would say the commentary, those who are upset or disappointed are very vocal. The vast majority of folks have moved on.
Yeah.
That's what
I miss bottles. I love that Steam Whistle still has their green pry off top because I love drinking. And Erica McCuster is coming on this show very soon, the brewmaster at Steam Whistle. So we're going to drink some Steam Whistle bottles.
And I was talking to John Sleeman about this 6 weeks ago, and he's like, yeah, I mean, I run my can line like 7 days a week, and I run my bottle line, like a day a week. But
when we were there in 2023, we saw your big blue behemoth of a bottle washer. We're like, that sucker is like a city block.
Oh, yeah.
So what are you doing with that? Are you getting
everything I'm not going to say which competitor I learned this from, but I learned it from a competitor who, when they announce something, they just got rid of it.
Yeah.
So
that you're not going, oh, it's still sitting there. We can
it's all gone.
Yeah.
It's now warehouse space, and hopefully it'll be space for more can capacity in the years to come.
Because that sucker was huge. How did you get rid of it? Did you have to cut a hole in the ceiling, or
we had to cut a hole in the wall, and we hired these demolition guys that are actually a company from Ontario. They were awesome. Yeah. They came in with these like Mad Max forklifts or robots that like just chop everything up. And
wow.
It was really impressive what they did.
Well, I have memories. I have the pictures of that. It's massive. It was a massive bottle washer. So rest in peace to the green bottles. But for those people out there who genuinely love Moosehead in a bottle, what do you want to say to them right now? What could you say to them?
What I would say is my grandfather's preferred vessel to drink a beer out of was a glass. So whether the beer came out of a keg, a can, or a bottle.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think the previous generations of Olands who ran Moosehead would say about this move?
Yeah, I think they'd be, well, it's interesting because the first two generations, they only sold beer in kegs, right?
Yeah,
so they'd be like, oh, we sell beer in bottles? Yeah. And, generation, 3 and 4, surprised. I can remember.
The crown top aluminum, not even aluminum, were they steel cans? I can
remember, and this is, my father's an amazing man. I can remember we're in sort of the meeting where, okay, we've decided we're going to do this and we're going to do it, but I still have to sort of talk to my father about it, right? And I went down and we just talked about it, and he just said, yeah, I mean, we can see the numbers. We can, it's just the writing's on the wall, and it's interesting, so as sort of just to put an endpoint on that, like, how many Ontario craft brewers sell bottles?
No one anymore.
And
we're done.
And if someone started a brewery today, they wouldn't sell
100%.
It's just
the LCBO really dictated the market to us in the early or the late 2000s. They wanted to see more cans, more tall boys, more artwork on them, and so it is. It's like it's a canvas, whereas a bottle you had that little square.
And you have to remember, like, the industry standard bottle, when it was first came in, it was all about efficiency and all this stuff. But into the 80s and 90s, it was really a tariff barrier versus the Americans, right? The Americans aren't.
You don't want to get me started on the Ontario craft beer tax or on the can environmental fee, which we just got waived. It's all part of the wholesale pricing now. But yes, 100%. I know exactly what you're talking about. So let's move from bottles to cans and a little bit about marketing. So you just announced, it was like 2 weeks ago, Maple Leaf tab lids on your new cans. You have a red topper on the top of the cans, a very small detail on the tab itself, but it really jumped out because you're leaning into that Canadiana. So what's the story behind that? Is it just a one-time thing, or is this you guys are going with it?
So,
and can we borrow some for our Canuck?
So we all know what's going on down south of the border.
Yeah.
And, if we were talking, maybe a year, 18 months ago, it's like, okay, is this Canadian pride? Is it a moment, or is it more? And, we're very proud to be the only Canadian brewery that goes coast to coast that is owned by Canadians.
Yep.
And we think that's a story to tell, and we're going to tell it every way we can. And the team just did a fabulous job working with Crown, our can and lid manufacturer, to make this happen. And I I've seen execution at retail. I just talked to my Ontario sales team first thing this morning. They're so fired up. Our customers are fired up. It's really cool.
Well, you just answered the last question I had about this. That has the needle moved at all? Your social is great.
Yep.
And now your reps are engaged, which means consumers will soon be engaged, because that fire in the belly really pays off when your reps are out there talking to consumers, whether it be the LCBO, the beer store, and we're talking about Ontario right now. But is this is across the country?
Yeah. And
what was the investment like on that?
It was in terms of the Canatab. It has a slightly higher cost. And then, we have to run the equipment a little slower to get it through. But compared to some of the crazy things we've asked the operations folks to do over the last few years, they'd probably accept this one.
Well, speaking of crazy things, I got the presidential pack, 1,461 beers, one for each day of the Trump presidency, $3,490 plus tax. It was an amazing piece of marketing. Share that story.
So, we were looking for ideas, and we had one of these, idea generation sessions, and this came up. I was like, okay. And then we actually had to get into the sort of, I'll call it the logistics or the regulatory side. Like, can we actually do this? Because we can't just sell beer in certain provinces, right? But we figured we had ways. We've got a store in Dartmouth. We've got a store obviously in St. John, and then there's a way to do it in Ontario. So I said, okay, we got 3 provinces. We can do it. And we were worried about 2 risks. One was we were worried about just, south of the border and all that. But we were prepared to take that. And then the second one was we were worried, like, just, would people actually sort of get it? Like, we're just trying to have fun. And it was in March of 2025. And if you remember, this is back when tariffs were like on and off and just, it would be like, and we were looking for a window when we could do this where we wanted it to be fun. We didn't want it to be a joke.
Yeah.
And there was a window where Trump announced one of his 60-day retreat.
Sorry, did you say Trump?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Trump announced one of his 60-day reprieves and said, okay, we're going to do it. And we were still like, okay, we think we got it, but does the public get it? So I remember we launched it at 9:30 in the morning on a Thursday, and I'm up there, and we've had it going for 9 minutes, and we sold one.
Yeah.
And I was like,
oh my God. Yes.
and then it just went from there, and it took off, and we had to cap the number who bought them, and then we had really fun. We delivered them. And, we did the whole social thing and stuff like that. And a really cool story. One of them was bought by an American for his Canadian cousin.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So that was, and I think the lesson there, though, Troy, just is, we're always sort of overwhelmed by the assets, the tremendous assets the big brewers bring to the game. Mm-hmm. And you just have to go to Liberty Village right now and see what Labatt is doing with World Cup soccer, right? It's unbelievable, right? It's just like God has spoken and everything will be Michelob Ultra, right? But I think...
or they'll make you sign a contract.
Yeah.
Which is not...
But I think there's always opportunities. Obviously Moosehead's bigger than Great Lakes, and Great Lakes is bigger than most of the smaller brewers in Ontario. But there's always opportunities out there to get your message across.
Well, 2 questions just to cap off the presidential pack. The nervousness about wading into political territory. It's something in Ontario that's always prevalent with small brewers. Was there any of that? And two, are you really leaning into this Canadian marketing a lot more? I know I just kind of mentioned that with the can tabs, but why not? And
So
is it the right time?
So I would say, look, we don't want to be political.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't want to be.
Well, you called it the presidential pack.
but we're definitely proud Canadians, and we want to stand up for Canada, and we're looking at ways that we can tell our Canadian story.
Let's talk a little bit about the beer now. We did at the start. We talked about Alpine and 1930s or 1930s. Moosehead was around as a pale ale in the 1920s, 30s.
Yep.
One of the things I really find astonishing when you know beer historians will look at Moosehead in the lens of 1867 to today, Moosehead did not land in Ontario until the 70s. Which is crazy to think of because it is your number one brand across the country. Alpine is your number one brand in the Maritimes.
Yes.
So let's just look at the beer portfolio itself. You're known for the lager, a dependable classic Canadian. It's the backbone of the business. Just give me your overview of Moosehead beer, not Moosehead lager, but Moosehead beer in general.
Yeah. So we would have, I'll call it, 3 national brands, and then a couple of regional brands, and then some smaller brands. So our flagship, obviously, Moosehead Lager, but we would also have Crack Canoe, which is our 3.5%, 100-calorie, ultra light, better for you category offering, and then Moosehead Radler, 4% alcohol, and I think a lovely version of the Radler. It's not the lower alcohol, German style. It's more of a North American approach. So those would be our 3 national brands. You mentioned Alpine. We also have a brand, Moosehead Light, which is an East Coast brand, predominantly in New Brunswick and PEI. And then we have both a 20 barrel and a 1 barrel system in St. John at our brewery, and we play around with lots of fun stuff there. If you come to our tap room, basically every second week, there's going to be something different on tap. We're still working out how to really get that to market in a package format in a way that sort of makes sense for us as well as our customers and our consumers. And it's still a work in progress.
That's the small batch
program.
program.
That would be the small batch program. Yeah.
And maybe while we were on the small batch program, talk about the historical beers. You had a Susannah Oland, you had a Derek Oland beer.
Yeah,
by the way, if you have any cans kicking around, I want a couple of those cans. Yeah.
So we it's a great idea from the team. They said, we're going to have a sort of a beer for each generation, which was really fun as we went through Susannah Oland Brown Ale and through those. But then it was less comfortable when we got to Generation 6.
Was it you on the can?
It was Patrick and I on,
okay.
And that was a little unique and humbling.
Yeah. When you think about Moosehead in the craft conversation, so not just in Ontario, across Canada, you're not a craft brewery in the traditional sense. Small, nimble, but you're not macro. You're the largest independent, but when you look at it on the scale of let's just take Molson in Ontario, you're not even close. How do you define yourselves to your staff, to your market?
We like to think that, we're Canada's true brewery, and we're very proud of the beer that we brew, and we think that the beer that we brew, we're trying to be the best representation of that style, whatever the style is. And the reality is probably 85% of the beer that's purchased in North America or around the world is a North American lager in one format or another. And I think, the essence of beer and beer's biggest power is its refreshment. Mm-hmm. I mean, no one finishes their mowing their lawn and says, I can't wait to have 3 Pepsis, right? Like, it's just...
Well, they might say, I want 3 octopus.
Yeah, exactly.
But what are you going to do after those 3?
Yeah, well, but it's... And, why am I mowing my lawn? I'm mowing my lawn because I can have 3 octopus or 3 Moosehead lager or whatever. So.
What's been your personal favorite Moosehead beer over the years?
Anyone someone's buying. No, just, good question. I love beer. And I rotate through our brands, and I actually, when I'm traveling, if I can't get our beer, I'll drink someone else's. Yeah. And it could be a big brand that I haven't, I try to make a point of all the big brands, having them at least once a year just to keep track. And then I go through the, for me,
I mentioned at the top I think the first time we ever met, it was Hop City. You were launching that, the second time we met, I did the interview with you about Hop City, but you like Barking Squirrel, but you weren't drinking the Barking Squirrel like the lager. You were like into the IPAs, and you were into. Yeah,
I love beer. I think my favorite Moosehead story is. The Rolling Stones came to Moncton, New Brunswick. And you live in Toronto, the Rolling Stones, Taylor Swift, they come here you live in New Brunswick. To have the Rolling Stones show up is special. And frankly, not something you expect in your life. And so there's 70,000 people, and we were the beer sponsor. And for me to be able to have 4 or 5 Alpines watching the Rolling Stones on a July night was awesome. It was real. That's probably one of my top beer experiences ever.
I really could have gone for an Alpine today, but we can't get it in Ontario, right?
You can get it at the beer store.
Or the beer store, in cans. Yeah, 100% cans. Okay, we're into the home stretch here before we get to the rapid fire questions, which is always my favorite part. But as someone running a national brewery and as former chair of Beer Canada, what's your read on the Canadian beer industry right now?
So, headline, beer is far too expensive in Canada. At some point, government has to just take their foot off our neck. Where I come from, 55% of the cost of a beer is tax.
That's provincial and federal?
Provincial and federal combined. In Ontario, it's between 40 and 45. It's just, we've got, in New Brunswick, we've got 473s of craft beer that are over $5 a can. Yeah. $5 a can for a beer, come on. And it's just, it's unacceptable. And as an industry, we're fighting hard, but it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge, and beer is just far too expensive in Canada.
It's a good point that you brought up. The Coalition of Canadian Independent Craft Brewers and the Canadian Craft Brewers Association recently merged into one united voice for all independent brewers in the country, with an eye on federal excise reform and modernization. Beer Canada still remains focused on their years-long escalator battle. So I'm going to ask you this as a I'm with CCBA now, not the coalition. I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to put you on the hot seat here. Wouldn't Moosehead benefit more from a new tax structure where it benefits you as one of under the 1 million hectoliter breweries in the long run?
Yeah, I think the question is, what's the chance of that happening? And so this is the reality of the situation. You know how much you pay in excise. We pay like $15 million a year.
I was going to say, you're a lot more than us.
And so, when it goes up 2, 3, 4% a year, it's a material amount. Mm-hmm.
And for sure it is. I agree with you on that 100%.
I think the bigger issue is it's really easy for government to say no when we have an industry that's not united. And the reality is, we're all talking to the same people, and, at 1:00, one group comes in, and then at 2:00, second group comes in, and afterwards the politicians say, well, they don't know what they want. and that's really tough. I think there's, I think if we work together, we can figure out an approach that works for all.
And it's tough because I think of the 1,100 breweries in this country, there's 4 that speak the same language, and the rest speak the same language. And you have, your Great Westerns of the world that are, 250,000 heck, but they're only in a couple provinces. And then you have every province has a different regulations, different taxations, but federally, 75,000 hectoliters is your threshold for a craft brewery or to go to a big brewery. It just doesn't make sense. But with the modernization, the whole tax ask is like anyone under, 600,000, 500,000 would be paying less, and the top end would be, 1% more for the bigger ones instead. And then,
my response to that, Troy, is why are you penalizing the next generation of Moosehead operators, right? Like, because we want to grow, right?
For sure. And I think
why can't, very much in favor of at the lower numbers, everyone sharing, but why is there a cap?
And I get your point too, because you have to look out for 6 generations or the 7th generation. Whereas the new brewers, there's no chance they'll ever get to 300,000, 400,000 hex.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to the province. The provinces are a lot of the issue. But federally, you said take the foot off the throat of us. And I think that's a legitimate point. Let us be Canadian breweries.
Yeah.
Are they penalizing us?
And I just challenge folks, maybe you're not going to get 300 hex tomorrow, but it doesn't mean you can't get to 300 hex 10 years from now.
Where are you going to get it?
Yeah.
Today in this market, like if Great Lakes was opened up in 2010, we'd be a lot less volume than we are today, but we had the benefit of opening in 87. So we had, history and years of experience. If Moosehead opened in 1970, would you be the same size you are today? It's hard. Yeah, you can't say either way, but it's
I think ultimately, and I'll give you in a slightly different industry, but if you look at Cottage Springs and what they've been able to do in RTDs, right? So, and that's going right up against Diageo, right? Against Smirnoff Ice and stuff like that. So, I think the consumer customers are looking for innovation. They're looking for high quality products and suppliers. And I still think there's opportunities out there for growth.
In Ontario especially, I think we haven't hit our mark yet against the big brewers. But on the big brewers, how do you compete with those global guys? You got one side, you have your small operations in Ontario. You have your small batch program in New Brunswick, and you're a national brewery. But then you are sometimes looked at as you're right there with a Canadian right beside Moosehead. So how do you deal with that? How do you forecast the next 5 years with that?
Look, it's both a blessing and a curse, right? So, we would have some advantages over you, obviously, in terms of scale and presumably some cost things and some ability to do things. But we would also have some disadvantages versus others. At the same time, we're focused on what we're focused on, and we're trying to provide value for our customers and our consumers. And I think that most Canadian, I'll call it customers, retailers, they see themselves in Moosehead.
Mm-hmm.
Canadian, and okay, like, oh yeah, I'm running 20 restaurants and wherever, but like I'm not running 5,000, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, and so we'll use anything we can to our advantage. We're just asking for a seat at the table and let us prove ourselves.
And that's where I look at Moosehead going, I don't want to put a challenge on you, almost like you are not those breweries, the big breweries. You are the standard bearer of independent. So fight that fight with all the 1,100 small brewers.
Yeah,
but I get what you're saying. You've been in it so long, and you've been battling with them for so long. But at the same time, you share a lot of the same similarities.
Yeah. So there's two answers to that. So one, the big brewers, and it's Labatt and Molson. Yeah. They bring
Etobicoke is 6 million hex. Just in Etobicoke.
Exactly. They bring incredible resources to many industry files, which are a huge benefit to Moosehead and to the rest of
us.
For all
100%,
brewers, all
sure.
brewers,
Yep.
right? So sometimes what we do is we focus on what divides us as opposed to what brings. And so, that is a huge value to Moosehead and to the industry. And fundamentally, this is where we disagree. And this, my line in New Brunswick is no different. My line in New Brunswick is I just want to be treated like a New Brunswick brewer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just want to be treated like
you're
Canadian,
a national brewer, though.
But I just want to be treated like a Canadian brewer, right? Why?
And that's where I'm like, okay, you have your Labatt, your Anheuser-Busch, and InBev, and your Molson's. That's the difference I'm saying to you, and that's where we agree to disagree. But I still love you anyway. Any big swings you're planning that you can talk about? And I really want to talk about, actually, I'm going to answer it for you, but I want to know about the recent purchase of the Mascot Brewery in Vaughan, Ontario. Yeah,
so just a little background for folks. Because of these trade regulations, we are obligated to own a brewery in the province of Ontario of a certain size and has to brew a certain amount of beer each year. Probably 25 years ago, we bought a brewery in Niagara Falls. We moved it to Brampton. We've been operating in Brampton for 20 plus years, and that facility is just getting to the end of its life cycle. So it's been really fun. Knocked on a lot of doors over the last couple of years. We were just looking for the brewing assets. We weren't looking for any brands or anything like that. And so we've been able to do a nice arrangement with the folks who have Mascot in Vaughan. It's a good facility. We're only kegging there, a couple of brands, and who knows what will happen over the next few years.
But is it going to be for just Ontario market?
It will definitely just be for Ontario market. Right now it's just kegs. It's unpasteurized kegs, so they only have so far to travel.
And is the plan like September? You're going to have like this opening?
No. Or it's very much sort of just. I'll call it a soft. We're not planning a public facing at this at this point. We may at some point. And, we talked earlier about what Andrew's learned. I would say Andrew from 15 years ago, we'd be planning like a July 1st opening. Yeah. Andrew of 2026 has learned.
Yeah, it's been a tough spot to get some consumer facing into there. Yeah. But you worked with a good company, and you worked with a good guy in Aaron Pronto, who's a good friend of mine. And
and I really, really enjoyed getting to know Aaron. Aaron's, of course, originally
He's
from
a
Nova Scotia,
yeah.
and it just worked well. He's still got his downtown brewery, so it's good stuff.
He's coming out with a beer in Nova Scotia called Scotian Pilsner, I think is what it's called. Yeah. Last question before the rapid fire. It's a tough one. You're stewarding a 158-year-old brand. What's the weight of that? What do you want your next chapter of Moosehead story to look like? And what decision you've made will matter 50 years from now?
I think with any multi-generational family business, you just want to, when you come to the end of your tenure, you want to be in better shape than when it was when you took over. And I'm working really, really hard to do that. There are some areas where I've definitely accomplished that. There's some areas that are still very much a work in progress. And we still think there's a lot of space in the Canadian brewing industry for us to grow, and that's what I'd like to see us. And I'm not going to talk about what we're planning here, but we've got some plans to continue to make a real impact in the Canadian beer industry.
Your dad always said, like, the wood lot, he wants to leave it better than he found it. Same with the brewery?
Oh, yeah, for
Is
sure.
that your motto as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. We're going to come right back after a quick break and do some rapid fire questions with Andrew, and hang tight.
Here we observe the elusive GLB pet octopus named Octo. Protective, territorial, passionate about hops.
I can hear you talking about me.
Its prized possession, the Great Lakes Brewery Octopus Wants to Fight 6-pack.
Which is now available at the LCBO for some reason.
Ah, yes, 6 shimmering cans of the Great Lakes Brewery Octopus Wants to Fight 6-pack. Bright, citrusy, dangerously drinkable.
How about some privacy, pal?
Unfortunately for the octopus, the 6-pack is now widely available.
Don't remind me.
Octopus Wants to Fight 6-pack, now available at the LCBO.
Why I order?
Ouchie, Great Lakes Brewery, brewed for you, Ontario.
All right, we're back with rapid fire questions. What beer have you been enjoying recently other than a Moosehead or a GLB?
So I was in Ireland about 3 weeks ago. I think I'm peeing
Guinness.
black.
All right.
I had a ton of Guinness. And
nice.
it wasn't Guinness Zero.
That tastes like root beer to me. Guinness Zero. Anyway, what beer do you drink when no one's watching? There's a big pause here.
I drink our beers,
okay,
and
yeah.
I drink beer. So I don't drink scotch. And if you find me drinking rum, get out of the way, because it's the end of a bad night.
You're like me. I'm a homer.
Yeah.
We're a homer.
I'm a beer guy.
Name a brewery that consistently impresses you.
Sierra Nevada is, what Ken and Brian have done is just fabulous. And I don't know if you've ever been into North Carolina, and it's like a shrine to beer. Yeah. It's like Disney World. And just a quick story, I know when Ken actually came to Dartmouth in the 80s because we were selling some tanks. Yeah. He said he didn't buy the tanks, but he had a great time at the lower deck on Halifax.
The lower deck. Well, here's my quick story about the lower deck. If you fell into the harbor, the first phone call is not to the police, or it's you get them to the hospital right away, because that water was not good at the time.
I grew up in that water, so I know what you're talking about. It's better now. They clean it up. But it's better.
I had some big memories at the lower deck when I lived there. Name a person in the industry that has or continues to inspire you as the president and CEO of Moosehead.
I have a lot of time for John Sleeman.
Yeah.
John Sleeman is really impressive. He obviously got a big check a number of years ago, but he still works it every day, and he loves the business and is a true gentleman.
We had a beer a year ago, and he's coming on this podcast soon too. One business decision you'd redo.
So, you're trying to save some money, and we had this draft delivery business, and it was costing us like hundreds of thousands of dollars because customers were charging on their credit cards, right, to get the points. So I made the decision we were going to stop people charging on their credit cards. And they did stop charging on their credit cards. They just stopped paying too. So for like literally 3 months later, we got the credit cards back, and it took us like 6 months to get the money. Yeah, it's one of my worst.
In one business decision you'd never change. Well, you can't go back to bottles.
No. Just, the relationship with Boston Beer is very special.
If Moosehead did not exist, what would you be doing?
I have absolutely no idea. I know what I would not be doing. It would be something business wise, but I just something somewhat sales related, but I have no idea.
Best time and place for a beer.
My grandfather used to say it's noon somewhere. But I
think Jimmy Buffett took that line from him.
Yeah. It's always noon. So I really like on a Wednesday or Thursday after work, I'll come home, I'll have a couple of beers. My wife will put on some music. We'll cook supper together, and it's just nice. I'm surprised how much I enjoy that. But the other fun thing I really enjoy is we got some real characters on our sales team, and you'll get together with them, and it'll be sort of later in the evening, and there'll be 5 or 6 around the table, and they'll just start telling stories and talking crap about one another, and it's really enjoyable.
Best brewery you've ever toured?
Other than Great Lakes this morning. I would say the Sierra Nevada in North Carolina is really, really something. And then I think what Guinness does in Dublin, from sort of a commercial museum and getting that many people through a day is very impressive.
You know my answer for this question? It was Moosehead.
Thank you very much.
That meant a lot to me to go. You have tanks under the road, which is pretty cool. If you could have a beer with just one person in the whole world, dead or alive, famous or not, who would you choose?
So I got 2 answers. So the first is, I think it'd be really cool to get Susannah, George W., see George B. Philbin. I think that would just be really cool. But I talked about the Rolling Stones. I just think Mick Jagger is a really interesting guy, and just not just music, but he's just seen so much. It'd be fascinating.
So Mick Jagger aside, you want the Last Supper with all the Olands from before. I think that's pretty cool. Okay. That's a marketing thing you should do for like a label at one point. Andrew, thank you so much for this. This has been a tremendous conversation. And I really mean that sincerely. This has been a fantastic episode. 6 generations, 158 plus years, still standing, still independent, still strongly Oland. What you and your family have built and protected is genuinely remarkable, and I hope this episode really tells that story. To everyone listening, if you haven't picked up a Moosehead in a while, go find one. You're literally drinking history. Thanks again, Andrew. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Troy, and congratulations for doing this. Thank you.
Cheers. That's it. That's all, folks. Episode 65 with Andrew Oland, the president and CEO of Moosehead Breweries, has moved from the mash tun to the fermenters. If you enjoyed our conversation or any other episodes, please leave a review or a comment wherever you get your podcast. It genuinely helps more than you know. Today's episode was fueled by cans of Canuck Pale Ale, which you can find all over Ontario at the beer store, LCBO, convenience and grocery stores, and online at greatlakesbeershop.ca. But be forewarned, it may lead to spontaneous outbursts of the singing of O Canada. You can visit the brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in Etobicoke or grab some delicious eats and fresh pours at our brew pub at 11 Lower Jarvis Street in Toronto. If you have any content you'd love to hear us discuss on the show, guest ideas, or just want to tell us what you're drinking, drop us a line at podcast@greatlakesbeer.com. Until next time, please remember to keep tipping your glass of fresh GLB in the right direction. Supporting local never tasted so good.
To learn more about what's happening at Great Lakes Brewery, visit greatlakesbeer.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter or follow Great Lakes Beer on your favorite social media platforms.